Welcome to Seed to Success, the podcast where we deep dive into the strategies, stories, and smart decisions that help VAs and OBMs grow and thrive. I'm your host, Adrienne Donnelly, and whether you're just starting out or looking for ways to take your business to the next level, you are in the right place. Thanks for tuning in. Now let's get into today's conversation. Today, I am joined by a beautiful member of the Inner Circle, Kathleen. Welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
First time podcast of someone else's?
Yes, first time as a guest.
Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah.
You've obviously got your own amazing podcast, which we'll get into. But You and I had the opportunity to spend some time together in 2025, which was honestly for me one of the highlights of the retreat, getting to spend time with you. We had not had that much time where we had connected online in the Seed community previously, although we'd both been members for quite some time. And honestly, getting to spend that time with you and getting to know you better was such a treat for me. But for those that haven't had that opportunity to connect with you either offline or online, maybe we'll start with a bit of an intro on you and the work that you do now.
Yeah, fabulous. Thank you. I love the retreat. I think the Seed retreat is so great to get to know people in the community that you see and you interact with online, but you don't always get to meet in person because we're spread out all over the place.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my business is Kathleen Amy Virtual, and I have been in business for almost 8 years now. So I started back in 2018, and back when I started, there was a few virtual assistants popping up, but it wasn't really like a thing. There wasn't somewhere where there was like Seed, where you've got this beautiful community and mentorship through you, Adrienne, that you could go to. And so I was a mum. I had left teaching and had become a mum, and my friend in my mother's group, she beautifully creative woman, and she ran a wedding styling and floristry business, and she put a call out for like an admin assistant, and she said, you can do it remotely. It's a virtual assistant. And I was like, I'd never heard of a virtual assistant. What is that? So I went online, did a Google, and I was like, I have no idea. Like, I thought it was an MLM or a scam or something.
It's a pyramid scheme, guys. Sorry to break it to you.
That's actually what we're running here. But I had no idea. And I thought, wow, I can actually do this as a job, and I can use my skills that I've built up through like past experiences and past jobs and do this. She's like, yes, jump on board. So I started helping her with things like social media, website, blogs, really just helping her be visible while she focused on the front end of her business. And from there, it just really grew. Obviously I signed up, had an ABN, opened a business, set up my little Wix website and my social media, and off I went, and just learned as I went, because there wasn't really a place that I could go to and be like, oh, this is how you learn to be a virtual assistant, that I knew of at the time. And so it was very much just trial and error and learning as I go and trying things out, taking on jobs and then realizing I didn't really like it, and then evolving from there. And that's over the years how I've got to where I am now, which is more of a online business manager, or I used to call myself the Soulful Virtual Assistant, because it was very much not just ticking off tasks or doing the admin. It was really helping people hold the structure and the systems and the design in their business. Mm-hmm. And yeah, so now I'm an online business manager. And that's really just for the benefit of the SEO, that people can search me, that people know where to find, because that's part of it, right? And ourselves is something that people can find. But yeah, that's the long, and there's lots of twists and turns in this. Like, how deep do I get? The path to where I am now as online business manager.
It's interesting you mentioned about the SEO side, because people always I hear people say often the term virtual assistant doesn't resonate with me, but I'm not that familiar with online business manager. I'm like, to be honest, you can call yourself whatever you'd like, as long as that's what the same language that your ideal clients are using. Like, my clients still refer to me through my own VA business as their virtual assistant. And some people would look at that and go, oh, but don't you do way more than what they like, the admin or just the inbox management? I'm like, yeah, I do. But the title, that's what resonates with people when they're looking online. And I understand that some people don't resonate with that title at all. It's one of the perks of having your own business. You can call yourself whatever you want, but it's interesting you mentioned the SEO angle, because if you're using language that your ideal clients aren't also using, there's a chance they're not going to potentially find you.
Yes. I mean, this could be a whole separate episode that I would love to
Totally.
dive
I know some
into.
people would really I know of a few
I
people that would love to weigh in on this topic.
I love it. And I actually outsourced my SEO and got my SEO strategy completely redone. But one of the things that I've realized too, like you, is that my clients are searching for a VA. Like they're like, I need a VA. But when you actually meet them and work with them, we know that there's so much more that goes into it. It's like they want the strategy, they want the systems, they want the
the wing woman.
Yeah, they want a right-hand woman, they want a wing woman, which is really more than what the label of a virtual assistant technically is, if we want to get technical. But that's what they're searching, and it's the gateway. They're searching for a virtual assistant, so why not let them land on your site, and then you can expand while you're there and open up to that. But they don't necessarily need to know exactly. That's just what they're looking for and what they need. Yeah.
That's it. It's about speaking the same language, and then when the opportunity arises, educate them on the value that you can bring to their business. So you specifically now work with coaches, healers, creatives. What drew you to that space? You mentioned when you first started, your first client was in the wedding and floral industry. Now that evolution, 8 years on, how did you land on that niche in terms of the clients that you love supporting?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I'll kind of answer it on two levels. I think personally, and what's come through in my business, is that I've always been someone, like ever since I was a child, that's been deeply connected to the energy, like of a room. Like I'm very able to read the energy and people and what's sometimes being said, but not what's being said, and the kind of underneath thread. And so that's always just how I've naturally moved through life, being able to do that. And I think that comes quite in handy when you're working with other businesses, being able to know that they're saying what they need, that they might need something, but there's actually something deeper underneath that needs support in the business, and being able to bring that through. So that's the common thread that's been through it. But even with the people that I work with, I've found that maybe it's the way I speak, or that being able to read the energy, is that I attract people that are like that too. So it doesn't matter what industry they're in. There's always that thread that they are very intuitive. They're very aware of their own energy. They're very conscious of that and sensitive to that. And so they might not necessarily label themselves as a coach. They might be like a wedding florist who's bringing these beautiful visions to life for their couples through florals, and then they're very energetically attuned to that. And so that's how it's naturally evolved. And there's been things along the way, like I've just followed what's lit me up a little bit in life. I studied birth photography, and I studied holistic doula work, and I was a teacher in a past life for so many years ago now, 2015. And I studied my master's in education, was in student wellbeing. So it's always been that thread of guiding and supporting people to show up in the best way that they can. And that's currently through systems and strategy and design. Yeah.
It's fascinating to me. We talk a lot in our industry, as you know, about niching, and some people have very strong beliefs around niching, and sometimes that is defined by a certain platform or a client size or a client industry. But I love what you've said there around your niche is actually more almost like a quality or a value that the person holds, as opposed to what it says on the door, what system they use in their business, what industry they label themselves at. Like your niche is actually more about who that human being is, and not necessarily how they do, like what they do, but how they do it.
Yes, very much so. You've just summed that up so well. I almost want to take that and
Lucky we're recording.
I love that. It's true. It's really so much. It's like being really able to see that person and their energy and their values and that gift that they're here to bring forward to the world, which is through their business, like through the channel of their business. And that quality is that they are usually very vision-led and very values-led and heart-led and ready to bring something to the world in that way. Yeah.
I see some businesses like your own, a beautiful colleague of ours, Jess Dixon, Casey as well also talk a lot about this, is working in with soul-led businesses. And you mentioned before the business you used to refer to yourself as a soulful virtual assistant. If that language is not familiar to some people listening or watching, is that how you would describe it? What you've just said, who are the business is the vehicle, but it's more about they're making decisions based on that energy or what their soul is speaking to them or telling them.
Yes, yep, heart-led and soul-led. So I describe soul-led business support or soulful business support or a soulful virtual assistant as someone who's, when I'm looking and when I'm working with people, I'm really looking at the entirety of them as well as their business. So we are separate from our business. We are like our own being, and our business is its own entity. But that when you are the leader in your business, I feel like that naturally intertwines.
Yeah.
And it's so really the soul-led part is understanding them as a person, their capacity, their values, their vision, what they're bringing to the world, like you said, and really supporting them to do that through the vehicle that is their business. And also understanding yourself as the person who is supporting that business. Like you need to have a good understanding of yourself and your needs as well, so that you can also help other people with that in their business.
You talked about before a lot of the work you do is around systems and also strategy. And I love how you talk about strategy where you say it has to fit your life. And I guess that comes back to your point there around that intersection of our businesses and where it's our own run business. How does that sort of strategy and fitting it into your life work for someone like you that does have a family at home as
Yes.
well? And that balance, which I'm sure many of our listeners can relate to in terms of parenting, how does that then come into play when you've got a strategy, but you've got kids that get sick and that have days where they just need to be with you, and all of those seasons that you navigate as a parent?
Yeah, such a good question, because I feel like I've never had a business without being a mum. So I was a mum first, and then my business was birthed through that kind of like postpartum period and when I was pregnant with my second child. And so I've always had to create strategy that fits, because otherwise it looks great on paper, or you can follow anything that mentors or coaches tell you to do and like, yep, lock it in. I've got a great strategy. And then it actually comes down to doing it, and you've got a little baby on your chest that wants your attention, and or school runs and all the things. And so in a practical sense, it's like I'm looking at, what do I want to bring forward in my business in the next 12 to 18 months? What are my vision and my goals for my business, but also what's the reality of what's happening in my life, and planning as much as I can for that. So obviously things pop up, but things like knowing when the school holidays are, knowing when activities are, knowing what realistically my nervous system and my capacity can hold for my business, and planning around that. So for example, we've got school holidays coming up here, and we've got a big chunk. It's quite a big holiday in the middle of the year. So I know when I'm doing my 12-month, 18-month plan that I'm not planning any launches around June, July.
Right.
And if I am wanting to, which some of my clients have kids and they do want to do that, that we're bringing in support and creating the systems and structures so that they can be set up for success to do that. So it's not about shrinking your vision or shrinking your goals, but just being realistic about what you can do as a person and what supports you might need to get it done.
Yeah, that point about capacity is quite interesting to me, because I think there's that whole thing of like, we've all got the same 24 hours, but we don't all have the same health. We don't all have the same energy. We don't all have the same nervous system capacity, all those sorts of things. How do you manage? And you alluded before that your path has had many twists of turns, and I know because of what you shared, some of those have been health related. How do you then work out the difference with your capacity, whether it's just one of those days where you're like, oh, I just need to give myself a bit of kick up the butt, it's not actually as bad as what I think, or those days where you're like, I actually really don't have capacity? How do we differentiate between that, or what works for you, and knowing what's just a day where you're like, I'm maybe just a little bit unmotivated or hormonal, and I know you work a lot with cycles and managing your energy around that, versus this is actually a bigger issue around my nervous system or health or just the season of life that I'm in?
Yeah, this is such a great question. And I think it's been something that I've had to learn and continuously learn as like your capacity, I feel like, is not always set. It always changes. So it's a constant learning. And I think it's really just coming back to yourself and being able to understand yourself, not what other people are expecting of you or not what you might see people suggest, but really deeply understanding your capacity and your vision and your values so that you can discern whether it's you actually need to rest or if it's your mind just telling you a story that you should put that off because you actually don't want to be seen or something like that.
Yeah.
And for me, that kind of comes up. I think about, if I need to rest, there's going to be a clear cost, and I'm not talking like financial costs. I mean, like there's going to be a cost to like my well-being, my health, my relationships with myself and with other people if I don't rest. So it's kind of like, if I do this now, when I am pushed through, am I just borrowing from future me and I'm going to crash? Or do I actually need to rest right now, or do I need to push through? And so it's that kind of weighing up that cost and discerning. And when it's something that I need to push through, it's usually like a little bit of a story that's playing in my head. So I know, like, logically, I've got time on my calendar, I've got space to do something, but I'm like, no, I think I just need to have a little rest. I've got a lot going on. And then it's like, do you really though?
Yeah.
And it's just being able to discern that, and sometimes having a little laugh with yourself and being like, okay, thanks brain, thanks. Yeah, that worked in the past protecting me, but I don't need that now. But then other times it's no, I actually need to rest because there will be a cost for me if I don't.
I love that analogy around the cost. When I interviewed Larissa from the Inner Circle for the podcast, she talked a lot about that with her chronic health conditions around, if I do this today, it's almost like I'm taking credits or I'm taking tokens from my energy for the next day or the next day. So that discerning and making an educated choice and being self-aware enough to go, is this a story? Is this avoidance tactic? Whatever that might be. But if you are going to take these tokens, is it worth it? Because you're actually going to be borrowing that from another day, another window of time.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's weighing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Let's talk a bit more detail around the kind of work that you do with your clients. What you mentioned, support, strategy, systems, and anyone who follows you online, is those three words come, especially the systems and strategy comes through a lot in your content. What does that realistically look like in terms of the services, if someone's listening who's maybe considering coming into the industry or considering expanding their services?
Yeah. So I've got three different, I guess pathways that people can come into my business, and sometimes they overlap. And there's the kind of support pathway, which I call soulful support or business support, which is really that systems and high level admin and helping people in the day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month their business. So helping them identify what systems they might need in their business, what's working, what's not working, whether we need to bring in additional supports, and really helping them run their business like an OBM virtual assistant. And then I've got the strategy pathway, soulful strategy or business strategy, which is really helping people with things like their launch plans and like the strategy behind it, showing up online. What does that look like? How does that work for them? What's their capacity? What's sustainable? And how can we actually make the business grow and reach their vision while still staying in alignment with those people's values? And so that's looking at the strategy lens of it. And then I've got growth, which is soulful growth or business growth, which is really about the visibility kind of pathway, which is what we social media content creation, looking at your whole ecosystem, showing up online. What does that look like? And the day-to-day scheduling and maintenance of that. And a lot of my clients start with one path and then they weave in and out of, and sometimes they're doing all three, but those are the kind of three things that I offer through my business.
And those systems that you talked about, are they for certain parts of the business or the whole ecosystem of their systems in their business?
Yeah, it really depends on the client. Sometimes it's looking at the whole system, but often people come to me and it's just a few things that aren't working. So I always say I'm not a tech specialist. I always refer out for tech, but I can help them map and see from a high level overview of what's working and what can connect, and see how things can connect better, because a lot of people that I work with are things are sitting in separate silos. So they've got like a website, but it's not talking to their mailing system, or,
yeah.
they've got an offer, but there's no lead into it, or they've got a launch coming up, but there's no runway. And it's looking at what are the systems, what are the pieces in that we can connect together and make them really work more cohesively and function better for that business, so the business can succeed, but also so the leader can get a little bit more of a break and not have to do everything so manually.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because there's a million different systems out there, but as you said, if one's not talking to another, or there's constantly things we need to be looking at as functionality of each system develops, it may make another system in your tech stack redundant. And I really love your point about bringing in the experts. I think there's something very powerful for us as service-based business owners to say, look, that's actually not my area of expertise. And we've all done it where we've just said yes to everything, especially in those early days, because we're so driven and motivated to make the business work. But I think there's something quite powerful to say, I'm actually not the Kajabi expert, but let me introduce you to Mon or Diane, or I'm not the Ivory expert, but let me talk to Jess or to Casey or whoever it is. I think as though sometimes it might not be the answer clients want to hear, because they just want to work with you and you to do everything because you're their person in the business now. I think they do respect it.
They do.
I think they really respect it.
They do. And I actually have an example of a beautiful client who I work with long term now, who she came to me and she wanted a systems transfer. And I was honest with her. I said, this is not something that's under my belt. I haven't worked with that system before. This is what I do. And I think I'm quite confident, capable of doing this for you, but I totally understand. And she said she preferred to find someone that could actually work with that system. Yeah. And then a couple of months later, she actually came back and said, I actually can't find anyone for that particular system, but I trust what you've said and I'd like to work with you. And I was able to learn a new system alongside that while helping her actually transfer her physical system. So I think having that, being open and honest with people is so okay. You're not going to lose anything from it. In actual fact, you might gain beautiful clients that you wouldn't have before just from being honest with your capacity and your expertise.
I agree. And I think often it's those ones that we say yes to when in hindsight we probably shouldn't, because we're not probably technically the best person to do it. They're often the ones that we lose sleep over. They make us question ourselves and our skills in other areas because we're just feeling hopeless at this. They're often the projects or clients that we often lose money on too, because we're slumped over the computer at 2 a.m. trying to learn everything on YouTube. They're not probably the most financially viable clients, but I can totally relate to that desire to say yes, especially if it's a client and there's then that capacity to grow with that client. But that's a great example where if a client said, I actually trust you even more now, even though technically you're not the right person, but again, values wise, alignment wise, I can see you are the right person and we'll learn it together.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's quite powerful, I think.
It is. And it's about building that trust. I think sometimes, and I've done it early on too, taking on things, and that's how I learned what I didn't like. Sometimes you've got to dive in and then realize, actually, I shouldn't have done that, and learn from those, I wouldn't say mistakes, but learn from what you've experienced and with different clients. So you learn and you grow from it.
When we were talking about your 3 main service areas, you mentioned the word visibility. And I think that's a word that we see get thrown around a lot. And you and I both follow people that we probably look at. And we talked a little bit about this before we hit record about. And I often think this about your content when I'm under the seat Instagram and I see how beautifully you show up, not only consistently, but how true a match that is now that I've spent time with you in person, how true a match your online personality is. It is the same person across. But I think that showing up and visibility, it's really tough. We were talking offline before this about having those periods where we do tend to hibernate for various reasons, sometimes in our control and sometimes out of our control, that we feel like going a bit more inward, and that could be hormone related, energy related, just personal and external factor related. What advice do you give to your clients and also to yourself about how to stay visible when you are in a service-based business and you don't have hundreds of pictures of products that you can just put into social media content and newsletters and for you a podcast? What tips have you found work for you and or your clients around showing up when it really is the last thing that you feel like doing.
Yeah, it's so hard, especially when you're the face of your business. And a lot of the women that I work with, they are solo businesses. Like they bring in contractors every now and then, but they're really the face of their business, just like we are often the face of our businesses as VAs and OBMs and service providers. And it can be so tricky. And so my kind of thing is setting yourself up for success. And so to do that, we need to think about what can we do in terms of the systems and the structures and the supports and the strategies in our business. What can we create so that's not relying on our mood? Like I said to you offline before, if you're relying on your mood, and like sometimes I don't feel like showing up, but it's like, oh, look, there's, TikTok going out. Oh, there's me again. And it's just, I didn't even know, I scheduled it 2 months ago and now it's just going out and I don't have to think about it. If I'm luteal, if I'm grumpy, or if I'm just in a phase where it's full on in life, like it doesn't matter because my systems have saved me. They're going out regardless and I can maintain that visibility. And it does take quite a bit of strategy and quite a bit of systems and structure and planning to set up. But once you've got that rolling, it just keeps that momentum going without you having to do all of the things. And so then I can show up and pop up on a story organically, or I can share something organically when it comes through or when I feel called to. But my core kind of content, my core visibility content is just going out all the time without me having to think about it, because we do have those seasons where we're really full and we're booked and we don't need more clients, but eventually we might. And so in the past, very early on in my business, I would post when I didn't have as many clients, and then I'd get full and then I'd stop posting because I didn't have the systems to help me. And then so when those clients dropped off or left or moved on, it's like, well, I haven't been marketing myself and now it's starting from scratch again.
Yep.
Yeah. So I've learnt now, create a system and structure that just keeps going even when you're full, so that it's just there. It's like your core visibility, I call it.
Yeah, I think you're right about the content. There'd be at least a week of a month where I'm like, you don't want to see the ranty content I'm putting out this week of the month. You don't want to hear my opinions on anything. They're very aggressive. But you're right. It's like putting those systems in place, because I know when I'm, especially with with my own VA business that has the events arm, like when I'm really full with events, like coming up and posting on social media under the Seed brand, as an example, I just don't even have a spare cell in my brain to come up with anything. But if you just can go, I know that there's content going out this week, even if I'm here, there and everywhere and I'm offline all week at events and all these sorts of things, it's just almost like coming back to that batch content creation, pre-scheduling everything, so you can have that space to rest, to be with your family, to be called in other directions, to chase up a great client opportunity if it comes up. And then if clients do naturally wrap up, especially if you're doing those one-off strategy pieces or project-based VA and OBM type work, they do come and go, being always prepared for when the tap sort of gets turned off a little bit. It just really, as you said, it comes back down to having those systems in place to give you the space to tick that off for 3 months at a time, 1 month at a time, 1 week at a time, whatever that might be.
Yeah, even if it's just 1 week in advance, like I know I used to hate batching. I didn't like it. It doesn't feel in alignment with my energy. But once I had a system to actually do it, and I knew what I wanted to post, and I knew that each post had a role in the ecosystem, then I was like, okay, I can actually see the benefits of it. And I can, even if it's 1 week in advance. And some of my clients are posting, they've got their Pinterest scheduled 6 months in advance. So we've got like multiple posts going out a day for them 6 months in advance. And so they can now take time off their business without that impacting their visibility. It's scheduled. And yeah, I've got a holiday coming up soon and my things will be pre-scheduled as well to go out. So if you see me...
No, you didn't.
It's just no, you didn't. Just the visibility ecosystem is working how it's meant to.
It's working perfectly. Yeah. Talking about batch content creation, we talked about at the start of the episode, you have your own very beautiful podcast. How does that work in terms of the creation? Is that more based on the energy, the conversations you're having, the messaging that you're feeling called to share, or is that also to more of a kind of batch pre-scheduled? Because when I listen to them, I do feel like I'm just having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
So is that, how does that work in terms of the creation of the podcast? And share with us a bit about the podcast if people haven't listened to it yet.
Yeah, beautiful. So Soulful Strategies is really a podcast. It's a seasonal podcast and it's released fortnightly on Wednesdays currently. And I'm really excited because I've just turned it into a video cast as you were talking about. So you can, if you're like me and you like watching video and connecting with people in that way, you can watch it on YouTube and Spotify as well as audio, if that's what you're into. And it's really bridging that intuition and that kind of energetic part of business that can sometimes, when we look at online, can be really fluffy and like nice and just be in your flow. But what does that actually mean when we're wanting to bring something forward in our business, and what does it mean to be in flow? And also at the same time, that kind of pendulum can swing the other way where it's hustle and go and like launch at all costs, that hustle bro culture, which people don't really resonate with either. So it's really that bridge in the middle for people who know that you can be intuitive and you can be soulful, but you can also be strategic and you can also have a legacy and bring something forward. And so that's really what the podcast is all about, and how can we do that in a sustainable and coherent way. And so originally the podcast was very much a seasonal, literal and metaphorical seasonally. So I'd release it seasonally, but it would really be about the literal and metaphorical seasons of life, which I still go into on the podcast. So we're in winter now in the Southern Hemisphere, but what does winter mean when you're in your business and you're in that low rest period where you don't really want to do anything? You just want to get under the ground and just be in the compost a little bit, so to
little
speak.
hermits.
Be a little hermit. And how do you actually keep your business running while you're feeling that way? So that's kind of how it started. How do you bridge those very intuitive, natural feelings with the practical reality of, I've got to run a business and I want to make money and I've got a legacy here to build. How do I do that when I'm feeling like this? And so that was very much how it was. But I still batch create. So now it really comes through conversations that I'm having with clients. So things that I'm noticing in, even not just in our industry, but in the online industry as a whole, what I'm talking about with clients, questions they're coming to me with. And that's really how the episode topics are built. And then I structure it strategically around what I want to launch that year, what's coming up in my business, and so that I can weave that into the business. So it's very much like the podcast itself. It's like intuitive and energetic, but it's also like practical and strategic and making it work for my business as well.
I love that. And I think it's interesting you say about those seasons on the actual seasons that we navigate over a 12-month period. It's there are times where everything, you feel like so much more optimistic. Like in our newsletter last month, I wrote about like taking yourself back to that feeling of January where it's like it's warm, it's breezy, you're watching the cricket, there's like Christmas leftovers in the fridge, and there's that feeling of like optimism. This can be my year. I can create whatever I want. And then before you know it, it's like cold. The windows are closed. The leftovers are gone. There's no cricket on the TV. Like you're freezing and you're just feeling a bit like, oh, where's all that optimism and that new energy of the year? And it's so much of that is actually too based on like the seasonal weather as well. You mentioned before, it's like we're starting winter and we're all just starting to be like, do I really want to go to that event? Do I really want to show up? It's like we're eating different, we're maybe exercising different. So it's beautiful that the podcast provides practical tips for people that still need to run a business 12 months of the year, even if seasonally we're not feeling as motivated or as optimistic or as fresh as what we may do at other times of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of systems and strategies that you can actually bring into your real life. Like the first few episodes of this season, actually a lot of the first episodes of this season are about content creation and repurposing and being visible online. How do you actually do that? Like how can you turn one piece of content into multiple pieces of content to last you further, which is what I do through the podcast and videocast now, and what I do with my clients too. A lot of them have podcasts and videocasts and that keep them visible and keep clients coming in for them without them having to be constantly on this content hamster wheel of churning out new ideas all the time.
Yeah. And also when we're in a service-based business, like sitting and creating content for hours and hours also means we're not servicing clients in another area, which is the part that brings us in the financial gains for our business. So that repurposing part obviously is a very effective and good bang for your buck in terms of that creation, because all that time you need to be creating new content, if you're not repurposing, is taking away from the time when you're actually doing the kind of billable hours, so to speak.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You mentioned a holiday before. What else is happening in 2026 that you're excited about, that you're looking forward to? What is coming up for you?
2026, I'm so excited because it's June already, and I'm just so excited to see those little seeds, so to speak, that I planted grow, and like what fruit is going to kind of come from that, because since June last year, so 2025, so really 12 months, I've been in this huge recalibration period of my business. Like I've had my branding redone, had my website, The Beautiful Says from Whale Tail Digital, has done an epic job. She's in Seed. Definitely check her out. Like she's created me this beautiful, sustainable website. So it's this new home for my online home for my business and Soulful Strategies. I've had photography. Did I already say branding? Like I've revamped the whole thing. Like the systems and the structures were the same, but really like my online identity and presence has really been overhauled. And so with that, there's a lot of evolution in the business, but there comes like the personal evolution of stepping into that person as well. And so it's been full, like really full and quite intense. Like I'm not going to lie. So I'm looking forward to just seeing what fruits come from that, and just not taking the foot off the pedal, so to speak, but just letting those systems and structures that I've built actually hold me for a little bit so that I can just really winter.
Yeah, and have a bit of space for you after that kind of intensity of the rebrand and that kind of reimagining and evolution of the business.
Yes, absolutely. And I've got Soulful Strategies, the podcast is continuing to come out. And I've got a few little bits and pieces. Like I've just launched a content rhythm, like a self-paced framework for people. It's called the Soulful Social Rhythm. So that's like my first self-paced offering, which I'm really excited about, something that people can do themselves without me having to help them one-on-one. And so that's out, and that's really exciting.
It is. That's beautiful. If people are interested in finding out more about your work, about the pod, about the new social rhythm framework that you've built, where is the best place for them to go?
You can go to my website, which is kathleenamy.com.au. You can also follow me on TikTok and Instagram. That's kathleenamy.virtual. And of course, the Soulful Strategies podcast is just Soulful Strategies on YouTube and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasts.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope this has been a pain-free first guest experience for you. As I said, spending that time with you last year honestly was such a highlight, not just of the retreat, but of that year, and getting to connect with you in a different way outside of the screen. And today has been another way to do that, although we're still apart. So thank you so much for your day. I am forever grateful to the way you contribute to the inner circle in a very thought out and considered and soulful way. You always bring in our inner circle private community, there's often questions about feedback and client situations and navigating businesses, and you always bring just such a beautiful and often a very different perspective to a lot of the rest of us, which I think makes our community so much richer, because it really then is a collection of all different perspectives and voices. So thank you for today. Thank you for being part of our circle. Yeah, very grateful to you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited that this was my first guest podcast with you. Because, I loved meeting you as well at the retreat and just getting to know you better, and the beautiful community that you continue to create in Seed. So if anyone's listening, definitely get into Seed. Definitely.
We're not an MLM, we promise.
Not an MLM.
What a perfect ending.
Past me thinking about MLMs.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Seed to Success. Make sure you are subscribing so you never miss an episode. If you know a VA or OBM who might benefit from this conversation, feel free to share it with them. Let's chat again soon.